The council chamber was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. 47 different alien species sat in their assigned seats, watching the scene unfold with growing concern. Some had multiple eyes that blinked in patterns showing nervousness. Others had tentacles that curled and uncurled with worry. A few crystalline beings simply glowed with colors that meant fear in their language. Derek Matthews sat in the human chair, completely relaxed. He wore a simple black suit with a blue tie, looking more like a businessman than someone about to face a war declaration. In his hands, he held an actual newspaper from Earth, the kind printed on real paper. The sound of pages turning was the only noise in the massive chamber. High Chancellor Vexler stood at the center podium. He was tall, maybe 8 feet, with scales that shimmered between green and gold. 4 eyes sat on his angular face, and they all blazed with anger right now. His species, the Kalmaran, ruled over 200 star systems. They had conquered 14 other civilizations in the past 100 years. When they spoke, people listened. The Kalmaran Empire has been patient, Vexler announced, his voice booming through translator devices. But humanity has gone too far. Your colonies violate our protected zones. Your warships patrol where they should not be. Your people ignore 17 different galactic protocols. Derek turned another page of his newspaper. He seemed to be reading something about sports. A small smile crossed his face as he read a particular line. Vexler's scales darkened with increased anger. Therefore, I declare on behalf of the Kalmaran Empire that a state of war now exists between our people and humanity. You have 72 standard hours to surrender all colonial holdings, dismantle your military fleet, and submit to our oversight. If you refuse, our battle fleets will destroy every human settlement beyond your home system. The chamber erupted. Delegates started talking all at once. Some began packing their belongings, clearly planning to evacuate before the fighting started. Others tried to calm their neighbors. The peaceful Delphinus representative, a being named Shelka, who lived in a water-filled sphere, floated frantically between groups trying to restore order. Derek took a sip from a metal thermos sitting next to his chair. The smell of coffee drifted through the air, making several nearby aliens wrinkle their sensory organs in distaste. Humans seemed to love the bitter drink, but most species found it overwhelming. Ambassador Matthews, Vexler shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. You will respond to this declaration immediately. Derek looked up from his newspaper, his blue eyes calm and unbothered. I heard you just fine, Chancellor. Just wanted to finish this article first. Says here the Yankees finally won after losing 8 games straight. That's good news. A wave of shocked whispers spread through the room. No one treated a Kalmaran war declaration like it was less important than a game report. The Kalmaran Empire was the second most powerful military force in known space. They had 12 full battle fleets, thousands of warships, and soldiers trained for conquest. Species that defied them usually ended up occupied or destroyed. Shelka floated over to Derek's position, her voice gentle through the translator. Ambassador Matthews, perhaps you do not fully understand what has just happened. The Kalmaran are declaring war on Earth. They have 12 battle fleets ready to move. Your nearest military forces are 3 systems away. You must respond with appropriate seriousness. Derek folded his newspaper carefully, making sure the creases were neat. He set it down on the table in front of him. Then he looked at his watch, an old mechanical one with actual gears inside. It seemed ancient compared to the holographic displays and quantum computers filling the rest of the chamber. I understand perfectly what happened, Derek said in a level voice. The Chancellor declared war on Earth. I acknowledge the declaration. Now I'm going to sit here and wait for my reinforcements to arrive. Vexler's facial plates flushed a deep red color, which meant extreme anger in his species. Reinforcements? Your nearest fleet is 3 systems away and consists of maybe 50 ships. We have 200 vessels in orbit around this very station. Our forces outnumber yours 10 to 1. What reinforcements could possibly arrive in time to matter? Derek poured himself another cup of coffee from his thermos. Steam rose from the dark liquid. He took his time adding a small amount of cream from a separate container. Should be about 40 minutes, he said casually. Give or take a few minutes depending on traffic. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes stood behind Derek's chair, her posture military straight. She had served as Derek's attach for 3 years now. Her hand rested near the sidearm on her hip, though she knew it would be useless if the Calmaron decided to attack right here in the chamber. She had learned to trust Derek's instincts over the years, but this situation seemed insane even by his standards. The chamber descended into chaos again. Some delegates were now running for the exits. Others were sending urgent messages to their home governments. The station's security forces, a mix of different species, began taking up defensive positions in case fighting broke out. Vexter stormed across the polished stone floor toward Derek's position. His clawed feet clicked with each angry step. You mock us. You sit there with your primitive paper and your boiled plant water as if you face no danger. Do you not understand that I can have this station destroyed? That I can have you killed where you sit? Derek met the Chancellor's four-eyed glare without flinching. I'm not mocking you, Chancellor. Actually, I'm trying to help you. Help me? Vexter's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound that meant derisive laughter in his species. What help could one human possibly offer the Calmaron Empire? Derek stood up slowly. He was only 6 feet tall, much shorter than Vexter, but something about the way he carried himself made him seem larger. I'm giving you a chance to reconsider before you make the worst decision in your empire's history. The chamber fell silent again. Even the panicking delegates paused to hear what would come next. You've studied us, right? Derek continued. You know humans come from what you call a death world. You know our gravity is almost twice what most species can handle. You know our atmosphere has oxygen levels that would be toxic to half the species in this room. You know our planet is filled with predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would wipe out most civilizations. We know you are durable, Vexter acknowledged. But being hard to kill does not win wars against superior numbers and technology. Derek checked his watch again. 35 minutes now? You really should start recalling those ships you have around the station. Why would I do that? Derek sat back down and picked up his newspaper again. Because in about half an hour, you're going to learn what it really means when a species evolves in hell and then builds starships. Until then, I'm going to finish reading my paper. 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Derek continued reading his newspaper as if he were sitting in a coffee shop on Earth instead of facing down a declaration of war. He occasionally made small notes in a leather journal he kept in his jacket pocket. Once or twice he chuckled at something he read, which made several nearby delegates edge further away from him. They wondered if the stress had broken his mind. The rest of the council chamber was anything but calm. Arguments broke out between different factions. The Delphinus Collective was trying to organize an emergency mediation session. The Terry Unity was demanding the council take action to prevent violence on neutral ground. 3 smaller species had already evacuated their delegations entirely. Their ships fleeing the station as fast as their engines could manage. Lisa Hayes remained at her post behind Derek's chair, though her jaw was tight with tension. She tapped her earpiece occasionally, receiving updates from the human security team stationed elsewhere on the station. The news was not encouraging. Sir, she whispered, leaning close to Derek. The Calmaron battlecruiser just powered up its main weapons array. Station sensors are detecting their fighters launching from the carrier. They have us surrounded? Derek made a small checkmark in his journal. Noted. What's our security team's status? Ready to extract you on your order, sir. But they estimate less than 30% chance of reaching our ship alive if the Calmaron actively try to stop us. Then we stay put. Derek turned another page of his newspaper. Better odds that way. Lisa wanted to argue but had learned that Derek's calm usually had good reason behind it. Still, she had never seen him this composed when facing such overwhelming odds. Most of the time, when Derek negotiated, he had some leverage. Right now, it looked like he had nothing except a newspaper and a thermos of coffee. Vexter was in deep conversation with his military advisors, their voices low but urgent. Occasionally one of them would gesture toward Derek, clearly recommending action. The Chancellor kept shaking his head, apparently unwilling to risk attacking inside the neutral council station. But his patience was clearly running thin. The station's mediator, Shelka, floated over to Derek again. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered in ways that showed deep concern. "Ambassador Matthews, please. Allow me to arrange a proper dialogue. Perhaps the Chancellor's demands can be negotiated down to something more reasonable. Your colonies could be moved. Your fleet patrol routes could be adjusted. There are solutions that do not involve war." Derek looked up at her and his expression softened slightly. "Shelka, I appreciate what you're trying to do. You're a good person, and the galaxy needs more beings like you. But this isn't about colonies or patrol routes. This is about the Chancellor thinking he can bully Earth into submission. If we back down now, someone else will try the same thing next year. We have to draw a line." "But the cost," Shelka said sadly. "War between your people and the Calmaran would kill millions, perhaps billions. Is pride worth that price?" "It's not about pride," Derek said quietly. "It's about survival. If we let people push us around, we won't survive long in this galaxy. Better to fight one war now than face a dozen down the line." Shelka floated away, her patterns dimming with disappointment. Derek felt bad about that. She was genuinely trying to help. But some situations could not be solved with kind words and compromise. Derek checked his watch again. 25 minutes had passed. 15 minutes to go, assuming his calculations were correct. He had sent the coded message 45 minutes ago, the moment the Chancellor had started making threatening noises. Earth's rapid response protocols should have kicked in immediately. The question was whether the fleet could get here in time. Vexler approached Derek's position again, this time alone. His four eyes studied the human carefully, as if trying to understand what he was missing. "You truly believe your reinforcements are coming?" "I know they are," Derek replied. "Even if they arrive, what difference will it make? We have orbital superiority. We have numerical advantage. We have experience in conquest that your species lacks." Vexler's voice was almost curious now, anger giving way to confusion. "What can you possibly have that would change this situation?" Derek set down his newspaper and looked directly at the Chancellor. "Do you know why humans explore space, Chancellor? Why we left our safe home planet and pushed out into the galaxy despite all the dangers? I assume for resources, for territory, for power. The usual reasons. Wrong." Derek's voice was firm. "We explore because staying in one place makes us vulnerable. Earth has been hit by asteroids. We've had ice ages and volcanic eruptions that nearly wiped us out. We faced plagues and famines and wars that killed millions. Every time we survived because we adapted. We spread out. We built redundancies. We made sure that no single disaster could end us." Vexler's scales shifted colors, showing he was processing this information. "You are saying humans are paranoid?" "We're careful," Derek corrected. "And when you're careful, you prepare for the worst. You don't just build a military for show. You build one that can actually win fights." "All species say that?" Derek smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Most species haven't had to fight for survival since they crawled out of the mud. You Calmaran conquered primitive worlds that barely had space travel. When did you last face an opponent that could actually threaten your home systems? When did you last fight someone who might win?" Vexler said nothing, which was answer enough. "Humans fight for survival every generation," Derek continued. "Our own planet tries to kill us regularly. We have storms that could flatten your cities, diseases that could wipe out your populations, predators that could hunt your soldiers for sport. We built civilization despite all that. Do you understand what kind of species that creates?" "A tough one," Vexler admitted. "A deadly one," Derek corrected. "Because we don't just survive. We master, we dominate, we turn every threat into a tool. And when we went to the stars, we brought all those lessons with us." The station's alert system suddenly began making noise. A soft chime at first, then more urgent tones. Shelka received a message and her patterns flashed in surprise. Chancellor Vexler, she announced, her voice shaking slightly. I am detecting massive gravitational distortions. Multiple ships are emerging from hyperspace. Many ships. They are appearing all around the station. Vexler pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. His four eyes widened as he watched the sensor readings. One ship appeared on the display. Then 5, then 20, then 50. Then the numbers kept climbing. Derek checked his watch one final time. 42 minutes. Not bad timing at all. The Earth Defense Fleet had arrived, and it was magnificent. Hundreds of warships materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation, as if they had been waiting just beyond detection range for exactly this moment. And perhaps they had been. Vexler stared at the display in disbelief. His carefully prepared ambush had just been turned inside out. The holographic displays throughout the council chamber lit up with tactical information. Ship after ship emerged from hyperspace, their positions marked by glowing icons that multiplied faster than most delegates could count. Within 2 minutes, over 300 human vessels surrounded the station in a formation that looked both beautiful and terrifying. These were not the small patrol ships or colony defense boats that most species associated with humanity. These were warships built for one purpose only. Their hulls bristled with weapon systems. Their armor looked thick enough to stop anything short of a direct hit from the station's main guns. They moved with precision that spoke of countless hours of training and coordination. At the center of the formation sat a vessel that dwarfed everything else. It was easily twice the size of the largest Calmaron dreadnought, a massive ship that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed in the philosophy of overwhelming firepower. The name along its hull read EDS Retribution in letters 50 feet tall. Attention Galactic Council Station, a crisp female voice came through the communications system. This is Admiral Kate Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received word that someone threatened our ambassador. We have come to ensure his safety and to remind certain parties that Earth does not respond well to threats. Derek stood and walked to the large observation window that formed one wall of the council chamber. Beyond the transparent aluminum, he could see the Earth fleet spreading out like a living thing. Smaller destroyers and frigates formed defensive screens. Medium cruisers took up support positions. Battleships and carriers held the center, ready to project power in any direction. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were fighters. Small combat craft poured from the carrier vessels like angry insects from a kicked nest. They formed patrol patterns, established perimeters, and generally made it clear that anything trying to approach the station would face serious resistance. How is this possible? Vexler asked, still staring at his display. Your nearest fleet was 3 systems away. To assemble a force of this size would take weeks. The logistics alone, the coordination required. Lisa Hayes allowed herself a small smile. You assumed we would need to assemble them, Chancellor. That was your mistake. Derek turned from the window. Earth has exactly 12 major fleet groups, Chancellor. Do you know why 12? Because we have 12 potential threat vectors that we identified when we started colonizing other systems. Each fleet group is positioned to respond to threats in its assigned sector within 1 hour. That would require, Vexler calculated quickly, a massive standing military. The economic cost would cripple most governments. 40% of Earth's total economic output goes to military spending, Derek said calmly. Do you know what that number is for the Calmaron Empire? Vexler's scales shifted to a sickly yellow color. 8%. Exactly. Because you have never had to truly fight for survival. You conquered species that could barely defend themselves. You absorbed their territories and resources with minimal effort. You have never faced an opponent that made you afraid. Derek walked back toward his seat. We are different. Every human grows up knowing the universe wants to kill us. We plan accordingly. The tactical displays updated again. More ships were arriving, but these were not warships. Supply vessels, medical ships, mobile repair platforms, and even construction ships began appearing at the edges of the fleet formation. The humans were not just bringing an army. They were bringing everything needed to sustain military operations indefinitely. Shelka was frantically trying to contact both sides, her patterns flashing in colors that meant distress in her species. "Please, both of you, this can still be resolved peacefully." Ambassador Matthews, surely this show of force is sufficient. Chancellor Vexler, surely you can see that continuing this path leads to disaster. But neither side was listening to her anymore. This was now a contest of wills between two species, and only one could back down. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the main display screen. She was a woman who looked to be in her 50s, with gray streaking through her dark hair. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, despite having just led a fleet through a high-speed hyperspace jump that would have left most people disoriented. Her brown eyes were sharp and calculating as they swept across the council chamber. "Ambassador Matthews," she said formally, "report your status." "I am unharmed, Admiral. The Chancellor and I were just having a discussion about the risks of declaring war on Earth." "I see." Morrison's expression did not change, but something cold entered her voice. "Chancellor Vexler, I want to be very clear about our position. We have identified and targeted every Salmaran military asset within 10 light years of this station. Should any hostile action be taken against our ambassador, our personnel, or our interests, we are prepared to respond with overwhelming force. Do you understand?" A new tactical display materialized, visible to everyone in the chamber. It showed not just the ships around the station, but a detailed breakdown of every Calmaran vessel in the region. Beside each enemy ship was a designation showing which Earth vessel had it targeted, along with probability calculations for successful engagement. The numbers were devastating. In nearly every matchup, Earth's computers predicted better than 90% chance of destroying the Calmaran vessel, even in scenarios where the Calmaran had numerical advantage. The calculations showed Earth forces winning through superior technology, tactics, and crew training. Vexler's 4 eyes scanned the data in growing horror. The humans had identified every single one of his ships, including 3 stealth vessels he had positioned as backup plans. They knew exactly where everything was, and they had solutions ready for all of it. "This is a bluff," Vexler said, though his voice carried no conviction. "Your artificial intelligence is inflating your capabilities to intimidate us." Derek walked over to stand directly in front of the Chancellor. "Then test it." The chamber went completely silent. Even the delegates who had been whispering stopped to listen. "I'm sorry?" Vexler asked. "Test it," Derek repeated, his voice steady and calm. "Pick one of your ships. Any ship at all. Have it fire on any target you choose. One of our vessels, the station itself, empty space, does not matter. Fire 1 shot and see what happens." Shelka pushed her sphere forward urgently. "Ambassador Matthews, you cannot be serious. This station houses thousands of beings from dozens of worlds. Even 1 shot could trigger a battle that kills innocents." "The risk is minimal," Derek said, his eyes never leaving Vexler's face. "The Chancellor needs to understand what he is facing. Better he learns now with a controlled demonstration than after the shooting actually starts and people begin dying by the thousands." Vexler's scales shifted through several colors rapidly. Pride demanded he call the humans' bluff and show strength. Survival instinct screamed at him to back down and avoid disaster. But curiosity, that dangerous trait that afflicted intelligent species everywhere, ultimately won out. "Very well," Vexler said slowly. "If you insist on this demonstration, we shall provide it. Tactical Cruiser Vengeance, this is High Chancellor Vexler. Target the human destroyer designated Delta 7. Fire 1 shot across their bow as a warning. Do not, I repeat, do not hit the vessel. Just show them we are not afraid." Everyone in the chamber held their breath. This was the moment that would determine whether the next hour brought peace or the start of a war that might consume the entire sector. The Calmaran cruiser, a sleek vessel covered in weapon ports, adjusted its position slightly. Energy readings spiked as it charged its main forward battery. A brilliant bolt of plasma erupted from its bow, streaking through space toward the designated human destroyer. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for the next 100 years. The plasma bolt never reached its target. Three things happened so quickly that most organic minds could barely process the sequence. The human destroyer activated some kind of defensive shield that shimmered briefly in the black of space, creating a bubble of distorted light around the vessel. Simultaneously, a different Earth ship, a sleek craft that had been drifting in what appeared to be a powered-down state, suddenly blazed to life. It fired a single precise shot that intercepted the Calmaron plasma bolt mid-flight, neutralizing it completely in a flash of dissipating energy. The third thing was perhaps the most frightening. The massive EDS retribution adjusted its orientation by what looked like only a few degrees. But those few degrees brought what appeared to be an enormous, spinal-mounted weapon to bear directly on the Calmaron cruiser that had fired. The weapon began to glow with a soft blue light that promised destruction on a scale that made everyone nervous. "Tactical Cruiser Vengeance reports critical systems failure," a Calmaron aide announced, his voice shaking badly. "Their entire weapons array just went offline. Engineering reports they are detecting some kind of targeted electromagnetic pulse that shut down their systems without affecting life support or engines. They are defenseless but intact." The whole sequence, from the Calmaron firing to their ship being disabled, had taken perhaps 3 seconds. Maybe 4 if you counted generously. The humans had reacted faster than most species could even perceive a threat, deployed multiple defensive and offensive systems simultaneously, and disabled the attacking vessel without destroying it. They had done all of this casually as a demonstration, without apparent effort or stress. Derek nodded to Admiral Morrison on the display. "Thank you for the demonstration, Admiral. I believe it was educational." Morrison's face showed the barest hint of a smile, but it was the smile of a predator showing its teeth to potential prey. "Anytime, Ambassador. I do hope the Chancellor found our response time acceptable. We have been working on our combat protocols quite extensively. It is nice to see the training paying off." Vexler stared at the tactical displays, his mind racing through calculations that all led to the same conclusion. The humans had not just intercepted an attack and disabled the attacker. They had done it with such speed and precision that it revealed capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. And they had been holding back all this time. "You have been hiding your true strength," Vexler said slowly, each word carefully chosen. "In every border skirmish, every territorial dispute, every negotiation, your actual capabilities far exceed what you have shown the galaxy." "Of course we have been hiding our strength," Derek said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. "That is basic strategy, Chancellor. You never show your full hand until you absolutely must. But you declared war, and that changed everything. When someone threatens Earth, we show them exactly what they are facing. We give them one chance to understand the situation and make the smart choice." Lisa Hayes stepped forward and placed a data tablet on the table in front of Derek. "Sir, Admiral Morrison is requesting permission to begin deploying the orbital weapons platforms around the station. Standard defensive protocol for extended operations." Derek glanced at the tablet but did not pick it up. "Denied, we are not at that stage yet." He looked back at Vexler. "But we could be. Very, very easily. The Admiral has 6 platforms ready to deploy. Each one carries enough firepower to level a continent. They would be operational in about 20 minutes. The implications hung in the air like a heavy weight. The humans could fortify this neutral station so thoroughly that removing them would require either a massive military operation or simply abandoning the station entirely. Either option would be humiliating for the Calmaron Empire. Shelka floated between Derek and Vexler, her patterns flashing desperately. "Please, both of you. This has gone far enough. Chancellor, you have seen that humanity is not an easy target. Ambassador Matthews, you have demonstrated your strength. Surely now both sides can step back and find a peaceful resolution." "There is a peaceful resolution," Derek said calmly. "The Chancellor withdraws his declaration of war. Right now, in front of everyone. And he formally apologizes for threatening Earth sovereignty." Vexler's facial plates flushed dark red again. "You asked me to humiliate myself and my entire empire in front of the Galactic Council. You ask me to show weakness to every species that might one day challenge Calmaron authority. I am asking you to be smart, Derek corrected. I am asking you to understand what will happen if this war actually starts. Because, Chancellor, I have shown you our fleet. I have demonstrated our defensive capabilities and our response time, but I have not told you about our weapons research divisions. I have not mentioned our biological warfare programs. I have not discussed our capacity for total war when we decide that our survival is truly threatened. Derek walked to the observation window again, looking out at the assembled fleet. Earth does not just build armies, Chancellor. We build apocalypses. We create weapons that can crack planets. We design viruses that can target specific genetic markers. We develop strategies for fighting that would horrify every peaceful species in this chamber. We do all of this because we know, deep in our bones, that the universe is dangerous, and that sometimes survival means being more dangerous than anything else out there. He turned back to face the council. But here is the key thing you need to understand. We do not want to use those weapons. We do not want to fight this war. We would much prefer to trade with you, to learn from you, to exist peacefully alongside you. That is always our first choice, always. Then why the threats? Vexler demanded. Why this show of force if you want peace? Because peace only works when both sides respect each other, Derek said simply. You did not respect us. You thought we were weak. You thought you could bully us into surrendering our colonies and dismantling our defenses. You thought wrong, and now we are showing you the truth. The question is whether you are smart enough to accept that truth and adjust your plans accordingly. The council chamber was absolutely silent. Every delegate understood they were witnessing history being made. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in galactic politics for generations to come. Either the Calmaron would back down and humanity would be recognized as a major power, or war would begin and millions would die before a victor emerged. Vexler stood perfectly still for a long moment. His scales shifted through colors that showed he was thinking deeply, weighing options, calculating consequences. Finally, his shoulders sagged slightly in a gesture that looked like defeat even across species barriers. I need to consult with my government, Vexler said quietly. No, Derek replied firmly. You decide now. Right here. Because, Chancellor, in about 5 minutes, Admiral Morrison is going to ask me again about those weapons platforms. And if I do not have a good reason to deny her request a second time, she will deploy them. And once they are deployed, this station becomes a fortress. And once it becomes a fortress, removing us becomes exponentially harder. You have a small window to make the smart choice. I suggest you use it. Vexler looked at his advisors. He looked at the tactical displays showing the overwhelming human presence. He looked at the faces of other delegates, many of whom were clearly hoping he would back down and spare them all from the coming storm. Then he looked at Derek Matthews, this human who had sat calmly reading a newspaper while facing down a declaration of war, and he understood something important. This was not a man who bluffed. This was not a species that made empty threats. If war came, the humans would fight with everything they had, and the cost would be terrible for everyone involved. Very well, Vexler said, and his voice carried the weight of surrender. Vexler straightened his posture and walked to the center of the council chamber where all official declarations were made. His scales had shifted to a neutral gray color that signaled formal proceedings in Salmoran culture. Every eye, camera, and sensor in the room focused on him. This moment would be recorded and transmitted across the galaxy within hours. High Chancellor Vexler of the Calmaran Empire. Speaking before the assembled Galactic Council and witnessed by representatives of 47 sovereign species, he began in a formal tone. I hereby withdraw all declarations of hostility against Earth and its territories. Furthermore, I extend formal apologies to Ambassador Derek Matthews and to all humanity for the hostile rhetoric and military posturing demonstrated in this chamber. The Calmaran Empire acknowledges that our actions were precipitous and based on incomplete intelligence. We seek peace with Earth and wish to establish proper diplomatic channels to resolve our differences. The words clearly caused him physical pain to speak, but he got through them without faltering. When he finished, a collective exhale seemed to pass through the entire chamber. The tension that had been building for the past hour began to slowly dissipate. Derek stood and walked to where Vexter waited. He extended his hand in the human gesture of peace and respect. Vexter, who had studied human customs as part of his preparation for this confrontation, reached out and briefly touched his clawed hand to Derek's palm. "Apology accepted," Derek said clearly. "Earth has no desire for conflict with the Shalmoran Empire. We look forward to establishing better understanding between our peoples. However, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. This incident demonstrated that threatening Earth is not a viable strategy for achieving political goals. We will defend our interests with whatever force is necessary. I hope this is the last time we need to have this particular conversation." "It will be," Vexler assured him, and there was genuine conviction in his voice. He had learned his lesson today, and it was not one he would soon forget. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system again. "Ambassador Matthews, shall we begin fleet withdrawal?" "Yes, Admiral. Please maintain a standard security detail around the station for the next 48 hours, but the main battle groups can return to their assigned patrol sectors." Understood, sir. It was a pleasure demonstrating our capabilities today." Morrison out. The Earth fleet began to withdraw in the same precise formation it had arrived in. Ships vanished back into hyperspace in groups, the whole process choreographed like a ballet. Within 30 minutes, only a small patrol force remained, enough to ensure Derek's safety, but not enough to be seen as an occupying force. The message was clear. Earth could bring overwhelming power when needed, but it did not need to maintain that presence to make its point. Shelka floated over to Derek, her patterns showing a mix of relief and residual concern. "Ambassador Matthews, what you did today was incredibly dangerous. If the Chancellor had chosen pride over wisdom, this station would have become a battlefield." "I know," Derek admitted. "But Shelka, sometimes peace requires the willingness to fight. If we had backed down, shown weakness, we would have faced this same situation again and again. Every ambitious empire in the galaxy would have tested us. Better to establish clear boundaries now?" "I suppose you are right," Shelka said sadly. "Though I wish the galaxy operated on different principles. I wish strength did not matter so much." "So do I," Derek said, and he meant it. "But we work with the universe we have, not the one we wish existed." As the council session formally dissolved and delegates began to depart, many stopped to speak with Derek. Some offered congratulations on his handling of the crisis. Others expressed concern about humanity's military capabilities and asked pointed questions about Earth's intentions. A few simply wanted to establish friendlier relations with a species that had just proven itself to be a major power. Derek handled each conversation with diplomatic skill, reassuring the nervous, encouraging the friendly, and remaining politely noncommittal to those he did not fully trust. Politics was exhausting work, but it was necessary work. Lisa Hayes waited until most of the delegates had left before speaking privately with Derek. "Sir, that was incredibly risky. If you had miscalculated the Chancellor's personality, if the fleet had been delayed even by a few minutes, we would have been in serious trouble." "I know," Derek said, gathering up his newspaper and thermos. "But Lisa, I've been studying Vexter for 3 months. I read every report about him, watched every speech he ever gave, analyzed every decision he made as a military commander before he became High Chancellor. He is aggressive and prideful, yes, but he is not suicidal. He is not the type to commit to a fight he knows he cannot win. I just needed to show him clearly enough that he could not win." "And if you had been wrong about him?" Derek looked at her seriously. "Then I would have died here, and Earth would have gone to war, and millions of beings across the galaxy would have suffered. But I was not wrong. You cannot do this job if you are not willing to trust your judgment even when the stakes are highest." They walked together through the station's corridors back toward the human diplomatic quarters. The station was slowly returning to normal operations, though Derek suspected it would be days before the tension fully dissipated. Events like today left marks on a place, Back in his quarters, Derek filed his official report to Earth's government. He kept it brief and factual, letting the recordings of the council sessions speak for themselves. Then he sent personal messages to Admiral Morrison and the fleet commanders, thanking them for their rapid response and professional conduct. Finally, with all his official duties completed, Derek poured himself a fresh cup of coffee and sat by the window overlooking space. In the distance, he could see the remaining Earth patrol ships maintaining their watch. Small points of light representing humanity's determination to protect its people. Lisa found him there an hour later, still sitting quietly and watching the stars. "Sir, you should get some rest. It has been a long day." "In a moment," Derek said. "I'm just thinking about what happened today. About what it means." "What does it mean, sir?" "It means we have crossed a threshold," Derek explained. Before today, humanity was a minor player in galactic politics. New to the scene, interesting perhaps, but not particularly important. After today, everything changes. We showed the galaxy what we are capable of when threatened. That will make some species respect us. It will make others fear us. And fear can be just as dangerous as contempt. Are you saying we should have handled it differently? No, Derek shook his head firmly. We handled it exactly right. But now comes the hard part. Now we have to prove that we can be trusted with the power we have shown. We have to demonstrate that we are not conquerors, not bullies, not the next Cameron Empire. We have to show that humanity fights only when necessary, and that we genuinely want to exist peacefully with our neighbors. How do we do that? Derek smiled slightly. By doing exactly what we have been doing. By being honest in our dealings. By keeping our word. By helping those who need help and standing firm against those who threaten the innocent. By being the kind of neighbors that others want to live beside. It is simple in concept but difficult in practice. He stood and stretched, feeling the tiredness in his muscles from the tension of the day. But that is tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I am going to sleep knowing that Earth is a little bit safer than it was this morning, and that thousands of people who would have died in a war between us and the Calmaran will get to go on living their lives. That is enough. Lisa left him to his rest, closing the door quietly behind her. Derek finished his coffee, set the cup aside, and lay down on his bed without bothering to change out of his suit. Sleep came surprisingly quickly for someone who had spent the afternoon staring down an empire. 3 days passed since the confrontation in the council chamber. The galactic news networks were still discussing what had happened, with analysts from every major species offering their opinions on what humanity's display of force meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Some called it a dangerous escalation. Others praised it as a necessary demonstration of capability. Everyone agreed that the political landscape had fundamentally shifted. Derek spent those 3 days in endless meetings. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to establish better relations with Earth, now that they understood humanity's true military capabilities. Trade agreements were proposed. Defense pacts were suggested. Cultural exchanges were offered. Everyone, it seemed, wanted to be humanity's friend now that they had proven they could not be. Pushed around, the irony was not lost on Derek, before the incident. Many of these same species had barely acknowledged Earth's existence. Now they could not schedule meetings fast enough. On the morning of the 4th day, Derek received a message requesting a private meeting with Chancellor Vexler. Lisa was immediately suspicious. So this could be a trap. The Chancellor might be looking for revenge for the humiliation he suffered. It could be, Derek agreed. But I do not think so. The message came through official diplomatic channels, and he is requesting a meeting in a neutral conference room with full security protocols. If he wanted me dead, there are easier ways. I still do not like it. Noted, but we have to take the meeting. Refusing would be seen as fear, and we cannot afford to show weakness now. The conference room was small and private, designed for sensitive discussions between two parties. When Derek arrived with Lisa, he found Vexler already waiting with 2 of his own security personnel. The Chancellor looked different somehow. Less aggressive, more thoughtful. Ambassador Matthews, Vexler greeted him formally. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know you must be busy. Chancellor, I am curious about what you want to discuss. Vexler gestured to the chairs around the conference table. Please sit. This will not take long, but I wanted to speak with you privately, away from the political theater of the council chamber. Derek sat, and Lisa took up a position behind him, mirroring the stance of Vexler guards. The two leaders faced each other across the polished table surface. I wanted to understand something, Vexler began. During our confrontation, you said that you were giving me a chance, that you were trying to help me. I have been thinking about those words for 3 days, and I believe I finally understand what you meant. Oh? What conclusion did you reach? You were not threatening me or trying to intimidate me. You were warning me. There is a difference. Vexler's scales shifted to a color Derek had not seen before, something between blue and green. You knew that if war began, my empire would lose. You knew it before your fleet even arrived. And you were trying to give me a way to avoid that fate without looking weak in front of my people. Derek nodded slowly. That is correct. I take no pleasure in unnecessary destruction, Chancellor. Wars are expensive in blood and resources. They create hatred that lasts for generations. They solve immediate problems but create long-term complications. I would much prefer to avoid them when possible. Yet you are willing to fight. Of course, when the alternative is surrendering our sovereignty and allowing others to dictate how humanity lives, yes, we will fight. Every time, without hesitation, but that does not mean we want to fight. Vexler was quiet for a moment, processing this. My species has conquered 14 civilizations in the past century. Do you know how we did it? I have read the histories. You identified species that were less technologically advanced, moved in with overwhelming force, and gave them a choice between subjugation and destruction. Most chose subjugation. Yes, and it worked beautifully. We expanded our territory, gained resources, and established ourselves as a major power. But in all that time, we never faced serious resistance. The species we conquered were afraid of us, but they were not capable of truly threatening us. Vexler's 4 eyes met Derek's gaze directly. You humans are different. You are not afraid, are you? Of course we are afraid, Derek said honestly. Fear is a natural response to danger, and your empire is dangerous. But being afraid and being controlled by fear are two different things. We acknowledge the danger, prepare for it, and then make our decisions based on what is right for humanity, not based on avoiding what frightens us. That is what makes you dangerous, Vexler said. Not your weapons or your ships or your training, your mindset. You act like a species that has nothing to lose, even though you clearly have much to lose. It is unsettling. Derek smiled slightly. We act like a species that has lost everything before and knows we can survive it again. There is a difference. When you have been nearly wiped out multiple times in your history, when you have faced extinction and clawed your way back, you develop a certain perspective. You learn that survival is not about avoiding danger. It is about being tougher than whatever threatens you. Vexler nodded slowly. I see, and this is why you keep such large military forces. Why you spend so much of your economy on defense. Partly, but it is also about psychology. If we were weak, if we relied on others for protection, then we would always be at their mercy. We would have to accept whatever terms they offered. We would lose control of our own destiny. Humans cannot tolerate that. We would rather struggle with the burden of defending ourselves than live comfortably as someone else's dependent. It sounds exhausting. It is, Derek agreed. But it is also liberating. We owe nothing to anyone. We stand on our own feet. When we make agreements with other species, it is because we choose to, not because we have no other option. That freedom is worth the cost. Vexler leaned back in his chair, a gesture that seemed to indicate he was relaxing slightly. I wanted to tell you something, Ambassador Matthews. Something not for public consumption. My government is reconsidering our expansion policies. What happened between us has forced us to acknowledge that continuing to conquer weaker species is no longer viable. Eventually, we would encounter another species like yours, and the result could be catastrophic. That is wise, Derek said carefully. Perhaps. It is also humiliating to admit that we must change our entire strategic doctrine because one species called our bluff. Vexler's scales darkened slightly. But I suppose humiliation is preferable to extinction. Much preferable. There is something else. I wanted to ask your advice, though it feels strange to ask advice from someone who defeated me so thoroughly. Derek gestured for him to continue. How does humanity balance strength with cooperation? How do you maintain the ability to fight while still building peaceful relationships with other species? From my perspective, it seems contradictory. Derek thought about this question carefully before answering. It is about being clear about your principles and consistent in applying them. We make it known that we will defend ourselves and our interests with whatever force is necessary. We demonstrate that capability so there is no doubt. But we also make it clear that we prefer peace, that we are willing to compromise on everything except our core sovereignty, and that we keep our word once given. Over time, other species learn that we are reliable. They may not always like us, but they know where they stand with us, and this works? Usually. Not always. Some species will always see strength as a challenge that must be met. Some will interpret our willingness to compromise as weakness. But most species, most of the time, prefer predictable neighbors to unpredictable ones. If you are strong enough that attacking you is clearly a bad idea, and reasonable enough that working with you is clearly a good idea, then most species will choose cooperation. Vexler stood, and Derek rose to meet him. Thank you, Ambassador Matthews. This conversation has been enlightening. I suspect our two species will have many more interactions in the years to come. I hope they will be more pleasant than our first encounter. As do I, Chancellor. They exchanged the brief hand touch that had become their personal gesture of respect, and then Vexler left with his guards. Lisa waited until the door closed before speaking. That was unexpected. He seemed almost friendly. He is a smart being, Derek observed. He recognized that fighting us would destroy his empire, so he is adapting. That is actually a good sign. It means he values his people's survival more than his personal pride. Those are the kind of leaders you can work with. Over the following weeks, Derek watched as the ripples from their confrontation spread across the galaxy. Earth received numerous requests to join defensive alliances. Several smaller species asked if Earth would consider providing security guarantees in exchange for trade agreements. The Galactic Council began, treating human representatives with noticeably more respect and consideration, but perhaps more importantly, Derek noticed a subtle shift in how conflicts were handled. Species that might have previously used military threats to get their way began trying diplomacy first. The logic was simple. If humanity could field such overwhelming force, and if humanity was willing to defend not just themselves but principles of sovereignty and self-determination, then aggressive expansion became much riskier. The galaxy was learning that actions had consequences, and that the balance of power